Kennedy Space Center, home of America's space shuttle fleet. Nestled here on Florida's Merritt Island is the historic Launch Complex 39, where America's space program has been sending men and machines into space for over 50 years. Access to this facility is highly restricted, so it's rather difficult for the traveling public to get a good idea of the activities taking place around Kennedy Space Center. While NASA's public relations team works to get people behind the scenes at various space centers around the country, it is but a handful of those who have the privilege of doing so. In order to give adequate coverage to these events, one needs a more personal touch. Over the course of every space shuttle processing flow, a unique team of media professionals descend upon the Space Coast to witness and document these incredible events from the inner workings of the center. They come not only from the United States, but from countries all over the world. While on assignment here at Kennedy Space Center, media teams from around the globe are involved in a wide variety of tasks and events, all designed to help bring the visions and goals of the international space community into the public eye. From local news stations to foreign media websites, dozens of news agencies are represented here during space shuttle mission activities. Photographers, video producers, and journalists all come together to cover various processing milestones. From the arrival of mission payloads to the landing of the orbiter after a successful flight, all mission events are covered by the press in great detail so that the work of the space community can be fully realized and understood by the public. With so many activities surrounding any shuttle mission event, a certain amount of travel is often needed to reach the Space Center for attendance. Be it a half-hour drive from a nearby community or a plane ride that traverses half the world, members of the media go to great lengths to reach Kennedy Space Center for mission coverage. Several weeks or even months are required to plan for such a trip. Standard travel and lodging arrangements must be made, as well as plans for access to Kennedy Space Center once members of the press have gathered on the Space Coast. These access plans can be made 1 month or more in advance depending on event criteria, and approval must be obtained through KSC's Public Affairs Office. Only members working for an accredited media source, be it a national news agency or a reputable news website, will be approved for entry into the center for mission coverage. Beginning in 2008, representatives of NASAspaceflight.com, or NSF, began working from the KSC press area during mission processing and flight-related press activities. Up until recently, the purpose of having NSF representatives at the KSC press site has been simple journalism and reporting. Starting in 2009, however, additional members with various media skills began attending mission activities in an effort to expand the website's exclusive photo and video database. Members of the NASAspaceflight.com forum know this section as L2. This documentary is the culmination of the efforts of those on assignment for NASAspaceflight.com, as seen through the eyes of those who were there. All footage and still photography, along with the experiences that accompanied them, were documented on location at Kennedy Space Center, unless otherwise noted, by and for NASAspaceflight.com. With so much to document while on assignment at KSC, some find it helpful to have a pre-made plan detailing documentation objectives. Photographers and videographers often plan specific shots of both hardware and scenic subject matter well in advance of their journey to the Space Center. Some of this planning is based on prior experience, while other plans are based on research and theoretical possibilities. Each event, however, presents its own unique set of challenges that sometimes cannot be anticipated. Members of the NASA spaceflight team come from 3 states across America. Brian Popka, 35, is one of the team's 2 native Texans and specializes in artistic, scenic, and mechanical photography around the state's capital. A veteran of 3 launch experiences, he began his work in spaceflight coverage in November 2008 with the launch of STS-126. Larry Sullivan, 51, is another team photographer who specializes in scenic photography. A resident of the Sunshine State, he joined Brian Popka in 2008 to cover the STS-126 mission here in Florida, and has since added countless shuttle mission events to his list of experiences. Stephen Burgess joins the team from a little farther up the eastern seaboard. At only 20 years of age, he is the youngest member of the team. Living in Virginia, Burgess serves as the team's lead videographer and media conversion specialist, and covered his first shuttle mission in 2009 as STS-129 lifted off that November. Nathan Moeller, 24, also a native of Texas, is the team's lead graphics specialist and content verification coordinator. Joining the team in 2009, Moeller covered the ferry flight of STS-128 in September of that year, as well as the launch of STS-132 in May of 2010. Rounding out the team is Florida native Chris Gebhardt. Originally and currently a reporter for NASAspaceflight.com, the 23-year-old media veteran began his service with the organization in 2008 with the launch of STS-122. Since that time, Gebhardt has served as a valuable member of the media team, assisting with video assignments of various mission milestones and press activities. When brought together, the team is a photo and video gathering powerhouse, snapping hundreds of images and shooting gigabytes of high-definition footage at any given event. This film is the culmination of their work over the last 2 years. Every member of the media who comes to the Space Coast has a history behind their experience. As unique as the experiences are for each member of the team, so too are the stories behind how they got their start. For some, it's as simple as a lifelong passion for spaceflight and the desire to be involved. CollectSpace.com founder Robert Perlman recalls how he started his career in spaceflight coverage.
Well, I'm a child of the shuttle. I was born in 1976. My first manned launch in my lifetime was STS-1. And so having the opportunity to get up and close with the space shuttle has been a real honor, even though it has happened as part of work. 2003, we've been covering the space shuttle program as for the perspective that it's history in the making. CollectSpace is a space history centered site and news site and community site, and so our focus is how does the space shuttle missions that are ongoing relate to both what is happening now and what has happened in the past.
For others at the press site, their careers have spanned multiple decades, one of whom began his work in what was seemingly the golden age of the space shuttle. January 27, 1986, saw the beginning of the illustrious career of Florida Today and USA Today space correspondent Todd Halverson.
Then I came down here to Florida, and Florida Today, which is a local paper here that serves the Kennedy Space Center area, offered me a job on January 27th, 1986. And so I was at the Cocoa Beach Holiday Inn the next day when Challenger blew up. I don't know, you have the first draft on history. What NASA does is very cool. Space exploration is just very cool, and I think it's important to our species, the human species, the human race. And what's the most fun about it? I don't know. It's just an important thing to cover. It's a fun thing to cover. It's a hard thing to cover because you have to take NASA and you have to translate NASA into English, which I often tell people that's pretty much my job is I take NASA and I translate it into English so that the general public can understand this highly technical, subject matter.
Though the professionalism and ethical practices of those on site at KSC are traits to be admired, much of this behavior stems from a long career and knowledge of necessary work in broadcast media. Spaceflight Now representative David Waters describes the chain of events that led him to this point.
Well, what started me off in spaceflight coverage was when I was growing up in this area. I was working at science fairs, and I got an award from an astronaut, Mae Jamison. She handed out science fair awards, and I thought, oh, that's really nice. Let me look more into this space stuff. And I was a little kid then. And I watched all these rockets from my backyard. My family would come outside, and we'd watch all the unmanned launches and all the space shuttle launches growing up. So, one thing led to another, and eventually I started calling up the press site and saying, hey, can I come out here? When I was a teenager, and I said, I'll cover it for local radio stations. And I did, and that was fun. And eventually it led me into TV. It led me there to covering the shuttle for more than a decade. And then it led me to working inside the Space Shuttle program for a little bit as a spokesperson, and then now coming back out for the last launches as media. So just having been part of this and growing up in this community and getting to see it, that got me so excited that ended up putting me in this place right here today.
Time is 5:50, like as in 0550. It is way too freaking early to be awake.
An early rise is often a necessity for team members as they prepare for a day of press work at Kennedy Space Center. With so many cameras around, it's usually in one's best interest to be presentable. After a quick meal and packing of equipment that will be needed for the day's activities, it's a quick drive across the 405 for entry into the Space Center. To gain access to the secure facility, badges must be presented to KSC guards at checkpoints along the roadways. We'd like to show you these checkpoints, but the officials carrying sizable firearms prohibit documentation of the stations. After arriving at the KSC press area, members of the team are free to move within certain perimeters of the site as they please. The KSC press area has been in use since the days of Apollo in the late 1960s. It was here that hundreds gathered to watch the mighty Saturn V rockets lift off from launch pads 39A and 39B, just 3 and 4 miles away respectively. Since 1981, the site serves as a front row seat for those who come here to witness and document the launches of the Space Shuttle fleet. The open expanse of the press area provides an outstanding view all around. Just to the north of sight is the massive Vehicle Assembly Building, known to all space enthusiasts as the VAB. The shuttle hangars, known as the Orbiter Processing Facilities, or OPFs, are also visible. Launch pads 39A and 39B tower over the Florida brush in the distance, with the top of the shuttle stack visible behind the massive launch pad structures. Perhaps the most notable landmark on this site is the famous countdown clock, which can be seen on television ticking through countdowns and recording mission elapsed time during shuttle missions. Lining the banks of the Banana River, members of the media gather around this clock and the adjacent flag stand to witness launches of the Space Shuttle. The large Central Media Center houses offices of KSC public affairs personnel, the extensive media library, and workstations for members of the press. From here, the team can monitor mission events, gather information regarding hardware and processing, and obtain NASA images and footage for use in articles, video segments, and databases. Adjacent to the Media Center is the News Center Annex, where foreign media gather for their work while on assignment here at KSC. Next to these buildings is the Briefing Center, where mission controllers and managers give briefings to reporters and other assembled members of the press. In all, this press area serves as a hub for all mission-related press activities. It is from here that members of the media branch out around the Space Center to carry out their assigned task. Media activities typically follow the same timeline as any space shuttle mission. It begins months ahead of the mission's launch with the arrival of the mission payload here at Kennedy Space Center's Shuttle Landing Facility, or SLF. Working from a pre-planned area, members of the press set up camera equipment for thorough documentation of the arrival of the mission payload. Here, the team can record still imagery and video footage of the payload as it's offloaded from the aircraft for exclusive use on NASAspaceflight.com's L2 database. From the SLF, the payload will be moved to the Space Station Processing Facility, or SSPF, in the KSC industrial area. Here, it will undergo final processing ahead of its launch to the International Space Station. As the time to launch draws near, the press will be brought into the SSPF for up-close documentation of mission payloads and related hardware. Here, they will be briefed on the planned operations and capabilities of the payloads and are given photo and video opportunities for coverage. With the mission payload being prepared at the Space Center, the hardware for the launch vehicle begins to arrive at the Florida Space Coast for final assembly in preparation for liftoff. The first elements to arrive at Kennedy Space Center are the multiple segments that will make up the twin solid rocket boosters. These segments arrive by rail from the ATK processing facilities in Utah many months before the mission is scheduled to launch. And while the segments themselves are not visible inside their railcar canisters, the press are afforded the opportunity to document the train's arrival at KSC. Following a few months behind the SRBs, the massive external tank arrives in Florida. Traveling by barge from the MECO assembly facility in Louisiana, the tank travels up the Banana River to KSC's turn basin located just south of the VAB. This turn basin is directly adjacent to the KSC press area, so provided members of the media have obtained qualifications and permissions far enough in advance, they are afforded the spectacular opportunity to cover the arrival and offloading of the butterscotch-colored bullet-shaped external tank. While the tank already appears massive on television and in photographs, these images fail to convey the true scale of this massive element of the shuttle stack. Seen here being offloaded from its protective seafaring hangar, the Pegasus barge, the tank dwarfs not only the technicians moving it to the VAB, but members of the press who have gathered in awe to document the event. Our first stop is the area north of the Vehicle Assembly Building that is home of the 3 Orbiter Processing Facilities, or OPFs. The OPFs house the 3 orbiters that comprise NASA's Space Shuttle fleet. In OPF Bay 1 is Atlantis, the middle child of the orbiter team. Flying since 1985, she has completed more than 30 missions and has been an icon of international cooperation in space. OPF Bay 2 is home to Space Shuttle Endeavour, the youngest orbiter in the fleet. Taking her first flight in 1992, Endeavour has more than 20 missions to her credit and has played key roles in the assembly of the International Space Station. Finally, in OPF Bay 3 is NASA's flagship Discovery. As the oldest orbiter in NASA's post-Columbia fleet, Discovery has led the orbiter team in their work in space and has the most missions of any orbiter under her belt. The OPF is where the orbiters begin their journey down the road to launch. Here they are configured for their unique missions and prepared for flight. Within approximately 2 months of their scheduled launch date, the orbiter next in line for flight will be rolled from her space-age hangar to the vehicle assembly building, where the solid rocket boosters and external tank have been ready and waiting for some time. As the orbiter begins to move atop the 76-wheel Orbiter Transportation System, or OTS, the media gathers in a designated area for photography and video documentation of the vehicle. A small lot just east of the OPFs provide a spectacular vantage point for photos and filming of the orbiter as she rolls the short distance from her hangar to the VAB. As this event, known as rollover, typically occurs in the early morning hours, the sun provides excellent lighting for stunning images of the orbiter as she gracefully makes her way down the road toward entry into the vast expanses of the VAB. While the media even usually concludes with the entry of the orbiter into the VAB, the STS-134 rollover event in February 2011 holds a special surprise for the assembled team after Shuttle Endeavour completes the quarter-mile journey from her hangar to the assembly building. Having witnessed the liftoff of Shuttle Discovery just 4 days before, the team has already been fortunate to see 2 orbiters up close in one trip, but their luck is only beginning to kick in. Not long after Endeavour comes to a halt, the media teams are invited to enter the VAB itself for photo and video opportunities of the orbiter as she is prepared for her lift and mate with her ET and SRBs. Working from the 5th and 16th floors of the building, it's an impressive moment for everyone on the team.
Oh man, this is beautiful. It is.
With the orbiter safely in the VAB for mating to her solid rocket boosters and external fuel tank, members of the press are at times allowed inside for coverage of this event, although this is never guaranteed. But when it happens, the resulting images and videos are nothing short of awe-inspiring. It takes approximately 1 week to completely mate the orbiter to the rest of the stack and prepare the assembled vehicle for the roll to the launch pad. When this process is complete, the team returns to the Space Center for coverage of the final event involving movement of the vehicle before launch, a slow yet spectacular move known as rollout. Rollouts are typically conducted at night due to the calmer wind conditions and lower chances of storms cropping up around a vulnerable vehicle in the middle of an open space. During the move, the press gather at the press area to the south of the crawlerway for far-off observation and documentation. Occasionally, the press are given the option to be transported by bus to the road paralleling the crawlerway, where they can set up camera equipment for up-close documentation right along the path of the vehicle as the assembled stack rolls at about 1 mile per hour. If circumstances permit, the press may also venture out into the crawlerway itself for more unique vantage points and imagery. As the shuttle makes her way to the launch pad 3 miles away, the media return to the main press area to await the arrival of the stack at the pad surface. At this time, they are bussed to the pad perimeter for photo and video opportunities of the stack, which now sits atop the pad surface to undergo final preparations for liftoff. Upon arrival at the launch complex, the massive rotating service structure, or RSS, encloses the orbiter for weather protection and payload installation work. Barring an issue that necessitates a rollback of the stack to the confines of the VAB, this is the final time the media will see the orbiter until the eve of liftoff, now just a few short weeks away. More recent rollout events have seen NASA's Public Affairs Office taking the media inside the vehicle assembly building for up-close documentation of the vehicle as the stack begins the trek down the crawlerway to the launch pad. Working from the facility's ground level, as well as the 5th and 16th floors of the building, the press team is afforded a stunning view of the space shuttle from above and below. While post-rollout documentation events typically see the media stationed on photo mounds around the launch pad, the rollout of Endeavour for the STS-134 mission saw the press teams in a unique scenario in March 2011. After being given a few simple instructions about where they could and couldn't go, members of the press were given near unrestricted access to the launch pad facilities for photos. Larry Sullivan was on hand for the event and was able to capture stunning images of Endeavour from locations ranging from the surface of the mobile launch platform to the top of the towering fixed service structure. The unprecedented experience marked the closest encounter anyone on the team had with the Space Shuttle staff. As the launch of a mission draws near, a crucial gathering point for the media is the historic Launch Pad 39A, located just 3 miles east of the VAB and KSC press area. Pad 39A was the launch site of the first mission to land on the moon, Apollo 11, and is now the sole host of NASA's Space Shuttle fleet in the twilight of its operational lifetime. As the weeks and days tick down to launch, the media will become more and more involved with this site. From a rollout of the shuttle stack to interviews of the flight crew just weeks ahead of their mission to the revealing of the vehicle on the eve of liftoff, Pad 39A is a place where members of the press are afforded the rare opportunity to be a part of the mission experience. With the shuttle stack sitting atop the launch pad, the mission crew assembles at KSC for a countdown exercise known as the Terminal Countdown Demonstration Test, or TCDT. During this 3-day training session, the media are allowed into the center to interview the astronauts at various facilities around the Space Center, including the launch pad. For this special event, the media are brought inside the pad perimeter fence and stationed north of the flame trench and pad surface. Here, they will be briefed by the crew on the status of the training and will be given chances to ask questions of the astronauts prior to photo and video opportunities of the crew, vehicle, and launch pad. Once a mission has launched, there is little for the press to see and do around the Space Center, as there are no media activities planned during the flight of the orbiter. It is not until landing day that the media will reassemble at KSC for documentation work. On that day, the media is transported to the shuttle landing facility to see the orbiter return from her mission. The SLF serves as both an ending point for one mission and the starting point for another. Once an orbiter has concluded her mission here, be it by landing directly from orbit or returning on the back of the 747 shuttle carrier aircraft, she is towed back to her OPF bay for post-flight processing. Even though the various mission milestones are not always visible to the media and the public, the work of thousands is never finished. Just as one mission ends here at the SLF, another begins, as another payload for a downstream mission soon arrives to begin the process all over again.
+125, +1. We have been cleared for departure. Enjoy your flight.
For any media team, the most high-profile events for a mission are those leading up to the launch of the mission, including the liftoff itself. It is here that we begin our journey with the team from NASAspaceflight.com and experience these events from just a few days before launch all the way through landing. We'll pick up with the team as they assemble in Florida and prepare to execute their task in the coming days. Depending on the timing of the mission and availability of members on the team, some will drive to the Space Coast from nearby communities in Florida. Others will have to fly in from around the United States. Planning far in advance, the team will all rendezvous at the same time in Florida, usually 3 to 5 days ahead of liftoff, and begin their work together.
The team is here.
Yes, yes.
No sooner than the team has assembled do they go to work gathering necessary badges for entry into Kennedy Space Center, a process that began several weeks before their arrival. While these badges cannot legally be shown on camera, they are the keys to the KSC grounds and the famous NASA press area. Once the badging process is complete, the team will depart the KSC area for their hotel, which will be their home for the next week or so. Of course, some will elect to get the excitement started right away and take a tour of the Space Center, either with the public access tour or by taking the more restricted yet more exciting option and driving onto the grounds themselves for a quick look around at the press area. The first night typically involves setting up shop at the hotel and preparing all necessary equipment for the events to come over the next several days. After a long drive or flight, it's always wise to verify that cameras, tripods, and other documentation equipment are functioning properly. Primary and backup batteries for all cameras are charged nightly for optimal availability during the upcoming mission milestones. Tripods are adjusted to proper resistance settings, and photos and videos from the day are backed up to the team's online web server in case any equipment or data is lost, damaged, or stolen. While none of these dreadful incidents have ever occurred within this team, it's always best to be prepared in case they do. As stated earlier, it's never all work and no play for the team. It's important for them to take some time and enjoy their surroundings from time to time. With America's spaceport gleaming in the distance, it's not hard to forget at times that this is indeed a job. Even though the excitement is building, a long day of travel and setup for the coming week has exhausted the team, and before too long, it's lights out and a good night's sleep in preparation for the coming events the next day. The next day sees the team wide awake rather early, even for members Brian Popka and Nathan Moeller, who have lost an hour in their travel from Texas to the East Coast. Rising between 6 and 7:30 a.m., depending on when the mission falls in the calendar year, the team ventures outside for a look across the Indian River at Kennedy Space Center as the Florida sun rises behind the complex. It's L-4 days before liftoff, and the first major event of the excursion will occur today. The crew who will fly aboard the space shuttle will be arriving at KSC's Shuttle Landing Facility, or SLF. After gathering the necessary equipment, the team will make the trip across the river to Merritt Island and into KSC, where they will take the authorized route to the NASA press area. While unlike any other government facility in its operation, Kennedy Space Center is still a very secure installation, with security teams outfitted with traditional sidearms, MP5s, and AR-15s. Nothing will pose a threat to KSC personnel or hardware, or the media who gather to cover mission events. Shortly before departing the area for the scheduled press event, members of the media will line up along the press buses, where their bags and equipment will be inspected by KSC security teams. With the inspection complete and no danger found, the team will board the bus for a short trip to the SLF. Once the team arrives at the facility, they are stationed at the southeast end of the area, where the mission's flight crew will be arriving shortly. Stationed behind a predetermined barrier, members of the team set up camera equipment in order to prepare for optimal photo and video documentation of the event. After that, it isn't long before the familiar roar of jet engines become apparent in the area as the crew approaches. Arriving in style aboard either their NASA T-38s or a special Gulfstream jet, the mission's flight crew lands on either runway 15 or runway 33 and rolls to a halt in front of the assembled media. After debarking their aircraft, the crew set up to a pre-positioned microphone and address the media with prepared messages and pose for a few photos before departing the facility for their crew quarters just a few miles away. These photos and videos will eventually become valuable elements of the history books as they show American and international heroes on the road to their historic journeys, now just a few days away. With all personnel related to the mission now in Florida, the pace at which media events take place begins to accelerate. During the ensuing busy days, however, it is vital that the team take the time to pull the irreplaceable photo and video files from their cameras and back them up. Using their laptops, flash drives, external hard drives, and even their online network server, the team unload their memory cards and store the data in several places, ensuring the protection of the files, which can never be replaced if something were to happen to them. Oftentimes, files are downloaded and stored by team members who are unable to attend the mission activities as additional backup measures. With the team scattered across the country, the use of this technology keeps them united on the same page and protects their work from technological catastrophes. But the storage of these historical records is never the prime goal of the media. They're here to not only document these events, but to share the experience with the world. Careful reviews of photos and videos are conducted by the team in order to find the most pleasing shots that will help tell the story of the day's events. With hundreds of photos and gigabytes of high-definition video to review from any one event, this process is no small task, but it is a necessary job in order to best convey the experience to the public. Once the most desirable photos are selected, they are posted to NASASpaceflight.com's L2 section, where they can be viewed by subscribing members of the website's forum and exclusively used by the site's managing editor in news articles and stories. For those who do not subscribe to L2, a select few of the images gathered become a part of history via public news articles. But most importantly, the images and videos become historical records that get armchair spectators closer to the action than they could otherwise be. L-1. Just over 1 day remains before the shuttle lifts off from the Florida spaceport. This day usually proves to be the busiest of the trip, with multiple events taking place over the course of most of the waking hours. Every mission has a different liftoff time, and related pre-launch activities are planned around that launch time. To keep things relative, we will follow the events in relation to the timeline for mission STS-132 on May 13, 2010. With the mission slated to lift off at midday on May 14th, the pre-launch activities follow a normal person's wake and sleep schedule. The team arrives at the Space Center at about 10 a.m. for the planned science briefing at the KSC press area. It is expected that the media will be briefed on the planned science work that will take place during the flight. However, they're in for a bit of a surprise this time. As various media personnel prepare their work for upcoming articles and publications, word comes down that the planned 11 a.m. briefing has been canceled in favor of individual interviews of science personnel, as well as a tour of the Kennedy Space Center's Life Sciences Building, or LSB. Members of the press board the bus for the short ride to the LSB and arrive a few minutes later. Here they are given an up-close look at vehicle and mission hardware that is often ignored by the admiring public. From lockers and experiments that will fly aboard future shuttle missions to life support systems being prepared for use aboard the International Space Station, the media sees it all. It is here that the low-profile, yet often most vital tasks and preparations involved with manned spaceflight become apparent. After about 2 hours at the LSB, The team returns to the KSC press site to discuss their options and plans for the rest of the day. They typically depart the center for a bite to eat in Titusville, and then return to KSC shortly after. The biggest event of the day is yet to come, one that will be surpassed only by the launch of the shuttle, now only about 24 hours away. Since rolling to the launch pad several weeks before, the orbiter has been enclosed by the Massive Rotating Service Structure, or RSS. This giant gantry houses the equipment that installs the payload into the shuttle's payload bay ahead of launch, and weather protection panels that guard the fragile orbiter against the often threatening weather conditions commonly seen in Florida. With only about 21 hours to go before the shuttle lifts off, the RSS must be retracted away from the orbiter, clearing the way for the vehicle to thunder off the seaside launch pad. The event is a monumental occurrence, and one that the press are given the opportunity to capture on film, video, and in memory so that they can share it with the world. About a half hour before the first scheduled motion of the gantry, the media goes through the same security procedures seen 3 days before. Bags and equipment are laid out next to the buses for examination by security teams, and K9 units carefully check each bag prior to letting the teams on board the vehicles. With the all clear given, the teams climb aboard for the 5 to 10 minute ride to the launch pad, just a short 3 miles away. This is the closest any of them will get to the vehicle during the pre-launch press activities. The bus departs the KSC press area and passes the towering vehicle assembly building. As the convoy rounds the massive structure, the 3 orbiter processing facilities become visible to the west, as does the new mobile launcher, or ML, the future of which is unknown. Paralleling the rock-laden crawlerway, the buses follow the same path to the launch pad as the shuttle did just a few weeks before. For the teams on board, the excitement is building.
We take that turn out of the press side, and immediately the VAB takes up your entire window, depending on which side of the bus you're on, and you begin that short trek along the crawlerway out to the pad. So about halfway out, you come near the fork that takes you out to 39B or to 39A, and sitting near that fork is the massive crawler which carried this stack out to the pad just 3 or 4 weeks before. So that's you really feel like it's getting close. They're getting ready, but there are no words to describe how you feel whenever you make that last turn out to the launch pad, and just all the trees are out of the way. It's just this perfect clearing. Right next to the pad, just a straight shot leading up to the pad surface.
At last, the convoy makes one final turn in the road, and the massive structures of Launch Pad 39A, as well as the tops of the giant external tank and solid rocket boosters, appear outside the windows of the bus, towering over the Florida landscape. After being given information on the perimeters within which they can work, the teams depart the bus and take their places on the crawlerway in anticipation of seeing the orbiter for the first time in weeks, and the final time before she takes flight. At the launch pad, the team set up camera equipment for the best possible angles that will be needed in documenting the movement of the rotating service structure and the revealing of the full shuttle stack. Tripods are put into position depending on the terrain, and camera settings are adjusted to account for lighting conditions. It's important that all equipment be ready as quickly as possible, as movement of the structure is imminent. Not long after the teams are ready to capture the moment, the gantry begins to roll. Members of the media are quick to document every moment of the occasion, be it by photography, video, or both. Stationed approximately 500 yards from the launch pad, the extremely slow motion of the RSS is barely perceivable by the press. But over the course of several minutes, various elements of the shuttle stack come into view. Often the first to appear are the orbiter's tail and 3 main engines, showing up just below the bottom of the gantry. Once the RSS moves a safe distance from the structure of the orbiter, it accelerates and begins to reveal more and more of the vehicle at a quicker pace. During this time, it's important for the media to let their cameras run, stand back, and enjoy the majesty of the space shuttle right before their eyes. With the orbiter fully revealed, the press has about a half hour to get as many pictures and video as they can. But most important at times is remembering to stop for a few minutes, take some personal pictures, and soak in the experience. With the pad and launch configuration, the team stows their equipment and returns to the buses. As they depart the launch pad, they get one final glance of the vehicle as the convoy makes its way back to the KSC press area. This is the final time they will see the orbiter before she clears the tower about 24 hours from now.
To this day, I think, just based on the fact that the launch is over with in 2 minutes flat, pretty much, I think for me personally, RSS retract is actually a better time because you get to be close to the orbiter for a good half hour to an hour, and you can just stand there and just watch it and just absorb the moment. Whereas with launch, it's real quick. You know, get the shot. Okay, watch it. Okay, it's over. So it's kind of a lot more relaxed pace during RSS retract. This time for 133, I made sure to not get caught up in the moment, since I had been through it once, to really just, take my few shots, stand back, and just get away from the camera for a few minutes and just watch. And it was really good to do that. Larry was out there with me. He came out there, he was like, taking a few minutes, huh? It's like, yeah. You just have to, because it's such an amazing vehicle. You can't help but not do that.
Launch team just wrapped up. Mission management team meeting are not working any issues right now to prevent us from launching on time at 4:50 p.m. Eastern. Currently, the forecast has improved to a 90% chance of good weather for this afternoon's launch, up from 80% the past couple of days.
Launch day dawns not so unlike the preceding mornings, but this morning carries an added dose of excitement. Everything the team has worked for is about to culminate in the most thrilling experience of their lives and careers.
It's usually a very sleepy morning, mainly because of all the lost sleep covering the RSS retract, the NSF dinner that we have, all the picture editing, all that stuff. Usually by that point, launch morning is kind of a sleepless morning, but you're totally on adrenaline. You're just rolling with it. About the only time you have any time to kind of stop and relax is when you're at the press site, just kind of waiting for the next event.
As the countdown enters the tense final hours, members of the press begin to arrive at the KSC press area. The successful documentation of this event is crucial to the goals of the team, so staking a place at the edge of the press site early on is a wise move, as this open field will soon be packed with photographers, videographers, journalists, and many others who have gathered to witness this historic event. With mobile internet devices and scanners running, the team reads and listens to the latest updates from launch controllers stationed just across the street in the massive Launch Control Center, or LCC. About 4 hours from liftoff, the team climbs aboard the KSC press bus, which will take them to the Operations and Checkout Building, or ONC building, in the KSC industrial area just a few miles from the press site. Here, they will join dozens or even hundreds of other media personnel and KSC workers as the mission's flight crew departs their quarters and climbs aboard the famous Astro van. Waving goodbye to the crowd, the crew poses for photos and videos being taken by the media teams, stationed just a few short yards away. This is the last time anyone other than a few key KSC personnel will see the crew in person before their return to Earth after their mission. While some members of the team gather to see the flight crew off, others remain at the press area where they will be able to watch the Astro van and crew drive by on their way to the launch pad. Accompanied by the complex's security helicopter and a team of armed guards, the Astro van makes a quick stop at the LCC, allowing members of the press stationed just across the street to give the crew some final well wishes as they begin the final leg of their trip to the launch pad. Once the astronauts have departed the area, the team goes back to work verifying equipment functionality in preparation for liftoff, now about 3 hours away. As the final hours tick down, the media have their chances to interview mission personnel, payload preparation specialists, and even other astronauts who have gathered at the press site to see their colleagues off. Following a launch countdown on television or a webcast can be rather monotonous, as there's little to see or listen to during these times. For the team on site, however, these last hours tend to fly by very quickly. Soon the moment for which everyone has waited weeks, months, or even years arrives.
Passion we have, it's kind of one of those things where just being there is good enough. You know, you don't feel bored. You just kind of, there's things you do, you're there. You're living in the moment in something that not many people get to do.
As the time for liftoff approaches, final preparations are made for documenting the most awesome display of power the team will ever witness. David Waters describes the experience.
Well, I mean, watching any launch is extremely enjoyable. When you're sitting here 3 miles from the shuttle launch pad and you see that liftoff, you can't experience it unless you're here in person, but you get this burn in your retina as you watch the flame coming out the back and the first 10 seconds of that flame trail. If you're sitting there watching it with your eyes and then look away, you see this burn mark. And then if you feel the ground, there's that crackling noise. You'll see all the windows around you here at the Kennedy Space Center press site. They go like that and start rattling, and people can even feel it in the ground. So any launch is such an exciting moment for me out here. I mean, I just get chills watching every single one. Today, hopefully the same thing.
The team gives their equipment one final check. One last restroom break is taken about a half hour before launch. With so few chances to witness something like the launch of a space shuttle, nothing is left to chance, as no one wants the experience to be marred by photo and filming issues or the urge to go during liftoff. By the time the clock begins to tick down from T-minus 9 minutes, the team is prepared. All that's left to do is wait for these final few minutes to pass. With scanners and loudspeakers sounding with commentary at the press area, members of the media can follow the progress of the launch countdown and understand what is happening just 3 miles away at the launch pad. Though there's little to see over the tops of the trees, the towering fixed service structure and external tank are visible. At T-minus 2 minutes, the gaseous oxygen vent hood, or beanie cap, is retracted from the vehicle. Even from 3 miles away, this event is clearly visible to the team. In the proper lighting conditions, the shadow of the swing arm is visible as it crosses over the ET. T-minus 90 seconds. With cameras rolling and ready, heart rates begin to skyrocket.
And when we got within about 90 seconds, that's when your heart just really starts racing, and you really start to think, I came all this way. This is finally going to happen. This is about to become very real.
T-minus 1 minute. Liftoff is all but certain at this point. T-minus 31 seconds. The shuttle's onboard systems take over control of the countdown. The anticipation at the press site is peaking.
As you go into the last 10 seconds or so, you can't. Where we were, you couldn't hear the commentary. All we could rely on is what we know is happening at this point out at the launch pad. It's like, okay, there go the hydrogen igniters. Okay, there's T-minus 6. The engines are started, and that's when you hold your breath. And from where we were standing for STS-132, you can see you've got the big old tree line out in front of you across the water, and from there you can see the top of the tower and the top of the tank, and you wait for that steam cloud from the shuttle main engines. And when you see that cloud just that brilliant cloud just rising over the top of the trees, you hold your breath and you wait for that telltale sign of liftoff, which is the SRB plume going off to the north. And that's when you know she's coming.
Oh my God! Woohoo! Lift a holy.
And the final liftoff of Discovery, a tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's Space Shuttle team. The shuttle has cleared the tower. Roll program.
1-0, and liftoff for the final launch of Endeavour, expanding our knowledge while expanding our lives in space. Endeavour, program. Roger, roll, Endeavour. Houston is now controlling. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis. On the shoulders of the space shuttle, America will continue the dream. The program, Houston. Roger, roll, Atlantis. Houston now controlling.
With an awe-struck crowd below looking almost straight up at the vehicle and towering trail of smoke and exhaust, the stack begins an apparent arch in the sky, steering on course for its intended destination. With the stack visible for about 2 minutes, the team must be quick and gather as many photos and as much video as possible during that time frame. They won't get a second chance.
Go. Yeah, man, she is. My God. Oh my God. Something like that.
While it's true that no words can accurately describe the sights, sounds, and feelings of watching a space shuttle launch from 3 miles away, they can begin to describe the overwhelming emotions that are felt during the ascent and after the launch is complete. As the team returns to the press room for the upcoming post-launch interview, the feelings of those around are evident. Awestruck by the launch itself, media specialists take time to reflect on the experience with one another, review photos and videos taken during the event, and soak in the experience. While these images of the historic liftoff will soon be shared with the waiting public on NASAspaceflight.com, they can only provide a glimpse of what it was really like for those who were there to see man and machine leave the planet, bound for a destination in the heavens above. The day after liftoff holds no planned media events for the NASA spaceflight team, giving them a chance to take a well-earned break from the hectic pace at which they've been going about accomplishing their objectives. This day, known as L+1, allows the team to sort through launch imagery, selecting the best photos to be uploaded to the website's forum for use in the site's database and front-page articles. As per standard procedure, all files are backed up online and on external drives, ensuring their protection. With these tasks now complete, the team is free to visit the beach to relax, nearby parks for photography, or if they choose, the Space Center's public visitor complex, although the latter no longer holds a candle to the rest of the facility. But it's certainly a good time to gather a few more souvenirs and gifts for friends and family back home and abroad. But this relaxation, while well-earned and thoroughly enjoyed, is short-lived. The next day will see the team back in action with spaceflight documentation work. While L+2 brings a pleasant morning and time to sleep in, it is a day of waiting and documentation at the end of that waiting. About 10 minutes after liftoff, 2 days earlier, the empty solid rocket boosters fell into the Atlantic Ocean about 150 miles from the Florida coastline. As is standard for all launches, the 2 solid rocket booster retrieval ships, known as the NASA Navy, are waiting on site to pick up the boosters and bring them back to the Space Coast. Their return to Port Canaveral will occur in public areas, allowing for easy access by anyone who wishes to view the event. Early in the afternoon, the team departs the hotel for a short half-hour trip to Jetty Park, located a few miles south of the Space Center. From the long pier extended over the water at the port mouth, they set up photo and video equipment in preparation for the ship's arrival. It's not common to see multiple camera setups on tripods here on the pier, so the setup sometimes draws curiosity and questions from passers-by. But the team is always more than happy to share their plans and experiences with the public who would otherwise go on unaware of the events about to take place.
Watching and documenting the return of the SRB retrieval ships, I'd say is the most difficult event to plan for. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's impossible to plan for.
With no way of tracking the exact location of the ships at any given time, the team must often arrive on site well ahead of the expected arrival time, just in case the vessels pull into port earlier than expected. This, however, can result in a very long wait.
And we went out along the pier, which is at the port mouth at Port Canaveral, and set up our gear and just kind of started waiting on the horizon, thinking, oh, we're going to see them within a few minutes. 4 hours later, we were all sunburned and still waiting. Finally, 4 hours later, I catch sight of a short little white vessel with a big blue stripe on the side, which is the trademark. And that's when we were able to make the call and say, we see them, they're coming, and we were able to start getting video and photos.
It's certainly an encouraging moment for the team, as they know their patience has paid off. With the ships in view, the team members go to work acquiring still photography and video, although it's not much good until the ships get closer. Once sighted, it takes well over an hour for the vessels to reach the port mouth. As the team and other members of the public look on, the retrieval ships enter the port with the massive 150-foot solid rocket boosters in tow. The slow pace of the vehicles allows ample time for documentation. The team even has time to discuss the function of the boosters with curious onlookers and the events that led to this point.
It was really a study in contrast from going on L-1, seeing these fully loaded, very intimidating boosters sitting on the launch pad, to seeing them produce that awesome display of power on launch day right in front of you, to having them just float by you in the water doing, a couple miles an hour, with the nose cone detached and just floating like a log. They're not nearly as intimidating as they are a few days before, but it was neat to see that part of the mission come full circle.
With Liberty Star and Freedom Star now safely home in Port Canaveral, the team packs up their equipment in preparation for the final event of the mission's launch phase. While in port, the SRBs will be tied up next to the ship's hulls for the final leg of their trip before being sent home to the ATK facility in Utah. With the exception of early morning launches, L+3 is the earliest the team will have to wake up during their excursion to the Space Coast. With the final mission event before landing about to take place a half hour or so away, waking up at 4:30 a.m. is standard for this day. With equipment packed and ready, the team gathers a few short miles west of the port mouth at the Port Canaveral locks. This will be the final stop for the SRBs before they are towed to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station for cleaning, disassembly, and the train ride back to Utah. The port locks are also accessible by the public, so several people from both the public and media teams show up to document the event. The first retrieval ship, Freedom Star, arrives at the lock around 6 a.m. With the sun still below the horizon, it can be difficult to acquire decent photos and videos of the vessel with its space-age payload in tow. But this is also a good time for the team to experience the wonder of being so close to the rocket. During the RSS retraction event, members of the press are stationed about 500 yards from the vehicle. Here at the lock-through event, they are within about 25 feet of the SRB. The process of sending the ship and booster through the lock takes only about 10 minutes, so it's not long before the pair is on its way up the river toward Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. With about a half hour or so before the second ship is sent through the lock, the team has plenty of time for more wildlife photography. With a fleet of birds all around, manatees enjoying their morning activity, and fish hopping in the lock, there's plenty of subject matter to go around. Within an hour of Freedom Star's departure, her sister ship, Liberty Star, makes her way through the port to the locks. Passing beneath the massive drawbridge, the vessel slowly crawls up the waterway for her final stop before proceeding to the Air Force Station just to the north. Liberty Star presents a unique challenge, however. Her sister ship, Freedom Star, towed the left-hand SRB, which was attached to the left side of the vessel. Due to the lock orientation, the left side of either ship is closest to the public. Liberty Star tows the right-hand SRB, meaning the booster will be blocked by the ship, almost completely out of the public view. But some quick thinking by the team on site allows them to find a way around this problem.
As Liberty Star was coming up with the right-hand SRB, Chris had the bright idea to ask the lock attendant, we're badged with NASASpaceflight.com. We want to get some good documentation here. Is it okay if we get on the other side of the lock? Because there's a little bridge that goes across these massive doors. And the lock attendant just looked right at us and he's like, all right. So we scurried across the lock real quick, all five of us, and just waited for the ship to come. And right after we made it over to the other side, that's when the doors opened and nobody else could get across. So for that particular mission, we were able to get some pretty unique footage that nobody else was getting at the time.
With Liberty Star now making her way to the Air Force Station, the team's work with launch operation documentation comes to a close. The next phase of their work will be continued processing of photos and video, as well as preparing for the eventual landing of the orbiter at Kennedy Space Center, be it a straight return from orbit or on a ferry flight atop the 747 shuttle carrier aircraft. For some, however, the journey of covering events here in Florida ends here with the solid rocket boosters.
For 7.5 years wanting nothing but to see a launch, it had happened. I was satisfied, and I had gotten much more out of that experience than I'd ever thought possible anyway. So it really was, I'd say, the best trip of my life, and it's something that I'll certainly never forget.
With the mission of the Space Shuttle now complete, the orbiter begins the journey back home to Florida. Dropping from orbit for an hour-long flight to Kennedy Space Center, the trip home is a quick one. Long before the deorbit burn begins, the remaining members of the NASA spaceflight team return to KSC, where they are bused to the center's shuttle landing facility. It is here at the SLF that they first welcomed the crew to the Space Center just over weeks before. Now they will welcome them home again, but this time with a safe and successful mission behind them. While waiting for the orbiter to return, the team takes up positions on the SLF's control tower just northeast of the midfield point of the 3-mile-long landing strip. From here, they will be able to see the final approach of the orbiter, and while the actual touchdown will be obscured by the Florida brush, the rollout of the vehicle will be fully visible. With the shuttle quickly closing in on KSC, members of the press turn their eyes to the sky, eagerly awaiting any sign of the returning spacecraft. But well before they can sight the vehicle, they are greeted by the telltale twin sonic booms, marking the point at which the orbiter drops below the speed of sound and heralding the arrival of the spacecraft in the skies above the Space Center. Shortly after, the shuttle becomes visible to the gathered crowd as she lines up with the runway. Quickly but smoothly descending through the clear Florida sky, the orbiter makes a silent approach to the 15,000-foot runway below. Members of the press standing by begin snapping photos and videos as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Like launch, they only have one chance. The shuttle won't be making another pass. As the orbiter touches down, cameras zoom tight to catch the final moments of the vehicle's nose in the air and the deployment of the ship's drag chute. The nose gear touches down just as the spacecraft rolls through the midfield in full view of the press. While the shuttle will again be partially obscured by the brush at the end of the field, the rollout and eventual wheel stop of the orbiter remains in view. With the orbiter now safely home on terra firma at KSC, the mission of the Space Shuttle is complete. However, the mission is not officially over just yet. One final event will signal the completion of the NASA spaceflight team's work for this flight. It takes several hours to safe an orbiter once the vehicle is landed. The crew must disembark, and the spacecraft must be drained of her remaining toxic propellants. With these tasks accomplished, the dedicated team of KSC technicians begins the process of towing the shuttle back to her space-age garage, or OPF, a short distance away for final end-of-mission processing. The vehicle is towed along a special roadway built just for this purpose. Branching off the southeast end of the runway, the towway is a wide section of road that connects with the main route along the KSC property and leads to the lot north of the VAB where the OPFs are stationed. As the shuttle convoy slowly makes its way down the towway, cameras are running in preparation for the up-close pass of the orbiter. Here at this intersection between runway and roadway, the media team gathers for the closest documentation of the orbiter since the vehicle's rollover to the VAB from her OPF bay several months earlier. While the shuttle herself remains silent, the humming fans and equipment from the convoy make for a special parade as the vehicles proceed toward the OPF. But the event isn't over just yet. Once the orbiter convoy has passed the team on the towway, members of the press are bussed over to the OPF lot, where they will be stationed just outside the OPF bay for the final entry of the orbiter into her hangar. From here, they are able to gather final images of the orbiter before she is powered down, either in preparation for processing for her next flight or for decommissioning with the end of the program rapidly approaching. Either way, it is a somber moment for the teams who have gathered to witness the event. With the mission they came to cover now complete and all goals accomplished, it is time for the assembled NASA spaceflight team to part ways and return home. The L2 sections are once again packed with new photos and videos from the mission media events. Experience and skills have been gathered by each and every member of the team, be they in the realm of photography, videography, or mission coverage in general. All of these will be used again, either on the next excursion for a shuttle mission or in the pursuit of new goals back home. But above all, the experience of participating in the preparation, launch, and landing of the space shuttle, however small a part it may be, will forever remain as a vivid and wonderful memory in the minds of each and every one of those who have the great privilege of doing so.
I mean, every picture you take, every piece of video you take, it's do or die time, because it's the last time to get any of those shots for, that particular orbiter that's on the pad. And, that's another reason why we decided we've got to go with the good gear, because if we don't, we're going to be kicking ourselves for years to come.
I think the best part of covering this space program is the opportunity to engage people of all ages from around the world in what I think a lot of people think is that the best thing that humanity has done, that we're pushing our boundaries as we always have, and so being able to bring that story to people who are interested in it and people who may have just had no interest in it but are intrigued by something that relates to them.
The Space Shuttle program is unique. You will never see something like this in any other part of the world. A reusable space vehicle that was able to deliver people to space for 30 years. It's unheard of, and if every country could do this, they would be. There's a reason you only see 3 countries to this day that launch people. It's a very hard business, and this is one of the 3 places that has launched people, and the one that launches them very regularly. And we'll just see just a couple more here. So kind of a tough moment here to watch this retiring after 30 years, but it's been solid. It's had some accidents along the way and some tragedies, which the workers and the astronauts have all learned from, but just a unique spacecraft.
People kind of ask, well, how come you're still doing this after all of these years, right? Because I've been doing this now for 25 years, and I look around and I don't think there's a better beat than journalism. I mean, it is exciting to cover the nation's space program and space exploration, and it sure beats the police beat or covering, some podunk town city council, I mean, this is a cool job. Very cool job.